You are listening to the audiobook Veilshatter, Legends of Elyndar, now available on Amazon, Audible, and wherever books are sold. Featuring our three unforgettable heroes, an epic adventure begins.
Storm unleashed. The air changed with no warning. A pressure drop so sudden Veyran staggered, one hand pressed to the rune-bound rail as the world held its breath. The sky, already bruised by the morning's spent rage, warped above Windrest. Mauve thunderheads surged, painting the horizon in streaks of violet and sickly gold. The familiar dance of light across skyglass towers turned strange, cruel. Far below, streets twisted in shadow, their etched sigils struggling to hold against an emerging wrongness. The storm fell all at once, as if an ancient seal had ruptured overhead. Lightning shattered the cloud banks, splitting open the heavens with a violence that set every rune in the city to humming. Veyran tasted copper and storm iron on the wind. His weather rod vibrated, hungry for command, but the air's current skittered out of his grasp. Too wild, too unmoored for even a weatherbinder's will. Above the Lokiri towers, which stitched Windrest's highest arc together with skyglass threads, great sheets of blue fire pulsed and stuttered. Their rune inscriptions, crafted by half a century's patient runecraft, began to flicker, each character shuddering out of sync with the next. In the stormlight, the city's defenses looked brittle as hastily blown glass. Windrest's alarms rose, thin and uneven. Horns split the wind, carrying across the bridges that linked the city's wings. Below, Vairelian songbirds scattered in ragged flares of iridescence, erupting through latticework gardens and spiraling off into the storm, their calls fractured by thunder. Veyran braced himself beside a guard tower, mind racing. Magic, some deep, ancient word-binding, twisted the world above the city, rewriting the pathways of power. Each wordless gust seethed with intent, flaying the edges of his senses raw. He stretched out with his will, searching for an anchor, anything to ground the chaos. Visions bled into reality. Flickering shapes coalesced in the storm-lashed clouds. He glimpsed them by heart's recognition more than sight, a child tossing a ball of blue fire, a faceless figure walking on vanished bridges, the spectral outline of a rune priestess veiled in burning script. Each image tore at him, reminders of every oath broken, every friend lost to storm or silence. He forced focus. "Bind! Hold!" he whispered, feeding power into the rod. Weather binding cost him dear, lightning wrought injuries, sleepless nights, and the ever-present whisper of Zephyr twining desire with destruction. Now the cost rose unbearably. The city's heartbeat pounded against his own. Panicked, all of Uthira's weight balanced on the edge of his discipline. The storm fought back. Wind funneled between plinths, screaming through cracks in the city's skin. Rain fell so thick it stung his eyes open, cold and relentless as the memory storm he'd endured with Zephyrson. The sensation, white-hot, searing, reminded him that vision and weather could not be safely separated, not when so many fates knotted around his own shortcomings. He reached with his senses, flinging his will into the coils of wind. Rune-etched stones underfoot vibrated, answering the call, but their light flickered uncertainly. The city's protections, rails, bridges, market sigils, strained to hold, but cracks spiderwebbed across the carved runes as if the rune lords who shaped them now doubted their own craft. A burst of thunder threw Veyran from his thoughts. A rune Kellan appeared through the deluge, rain-sheeting from the ceremonial armor strapped over his city-blue tunic, lips drawn thin, hair wild in the wind. He shouted something impossible beneath the tumult, gestures broad and accusatory. Veyran didn't bother answering. Every scrap of focus funneled into his rod, binding, bending, coaxing the wind toward the patterns he remembered from childhood, stories older than the sky ring itself. But something in the storm denied him Words would not settle. Intent twisted on itself, reflected through stolen language. He tasted another's will entwined with the rain. Not Zephraisin this time, but something colder, familiar only in its signature of loss. Lokiri tower lights guttered. Their runes, once constant as sunrise, pulsed feverishly, colors spiraling from blue to crimson and back again. For each beat stabilized, another slipped out of rhythm, threatening to dissolve their wards and tumble half the city into roaring void. Somewhere inside the squall, the shadow of the Veilborn drifted, a pleasure in collapse, a hunger eager to devour the lives of Windrest's 1,000 households. With each spiteful surge, the unnatural lightning flickered quicksilver visions onto the storm's roiling skin. A woman in scholar's blue, her arm outstretched, skin already turning to mist. A pair of lovers clinging atop a shivering bridge as runes shattered beneath their feet. Children sweeping chalk across market tiles, racing their own past selves before the memory storm swept names from their lips. Veyran shook his head, refusing the lures of sorrow and regret. He pressed his palm to the rod, feeling the storm's cost gnaw bone deep. Sweat mixed with rain, stinging down into old scars, while the world pressed in, insistent and endless. "A rune," he roared at last, voice raw. "The anchors, bridges south and east, they're failing. Strengthen the runes or we lose quarters entire." Arun's eyes widened. For a moment, pride and antagonism fell away, replaced by the sharp, unblinking focus of a true weatherbinder. He shouted a command to unseen aides, hands flashing through complex sign, old sky ring patterns whose memory scraped like gravel. Echoes of warding artifacts joined the storm, threads of raw power directed into the spirit bridges. Their light steadied for a heartbeat, then bucked violently as another bolt of unnatural lightning split the sky. Veyran dove into desperate improvisation. "Tamaris os Valorn," he breathed. Old words, word-binding as battered as the heart that uttered them. The rod flared, drawing on his soul's dwindling reserves. Pain lanced up his right side, every muscle shuddering. He leaned into it, mind fracturing under the weight of power borrowed at too steep a price. The air thickened. Luminous veins crawled across his vision, searing lines of forbidden soul-weaving threading through the blood-wet haze. He wrestled them down, refusing any reminder of the chasm Zephraisin's touch had carved. Instead, he funneled everything left into wind, binding, twisting, pressing the violence outward, away from the city's heart. Something gave, a knot in the storm's pattern, a line of force twisting to his command. For a moment, the unnatural lightning veered south, tearing into uninhabited sky. The rain's tempo eased, shifting toward its native cadence. A ragged cheer erupted from nearby towers. Even the markets below dared a breath, as the city's runes flickered with renewed steadiness. But Veyran staggered, vision narrowing. Every heartbeat stoked the pain of power's limits. Blood ran from his nose, bright as spilled pigment against the sodden skyglass. The cost was climbing faster than his stamina could hope to match. He barely noticed as Arun rushed to his side, shouting for healers. The chill had settled into his bones, a shadow behind every breath. He blinked, and memory threatened to sweep him under the vision of Leora falling, of Avestra in ruin. For a moment, Windrest blurred, replaced by flame and shadow. He forced his mind to the present. The storm wasn't gone, only checked, its intent uncertain. The unnatural lightning stalked the edge of Windrest, hesitant, as if considering new prey. Veyran's will held the east and south, but the west wing, poorest, most tangled, still screamed beneath layers of rain and magic. A child's cry ripped through the noise. Down in the spillover beneath a broken bridge, folk scrambled for shelter. Veyran lurched forward, rod stretched out, stealing what tattered energy he could from the fading runeward. The world spun. Each movement ached, each breath caught in his chest like a promise about to shatter. He locked his gaze on the last failing sigil, a sunburst above a shop door, besieged by white-blue fire. "Not today," he rasped. "No more lost to broken wards." Summoning every reserve, he hissed the old command word, letting the rod act as more than channel, this time a conduit for his soul's battered core. Power arced, exploded through fingers already numb with overexertion. Runelight blazed, too bright for mortal sight, searing his vision with afterimages of hope and destruction. A boom resounded. Then, mercifully, the sunburst rune surged, repelling the last violent blast. The unnatural storm reared back as if burned, torn winds snapping away from the heart of Windrest. In the sudden hush, the city's towers dripped and steamed. Folk emerged, faces upturned, their astonishment raw. Arun knelt beside him, fierce pride burning through his old rancor. But Veyran heard only the echo of Zephyr's absence. The haunting void left by prophecy unspoken, shelter untaken. He fell to his knees, spent. Rain washed blood and sweat from his skin. Somewhere overhead, the Lokiri towers steadied, their runes flaring in halting sequence, victory claimed at ruinous cost. He wanted to weep, wanted to sleep for a dozen lifetimes, but Leora's specter would not loosen its grip. The threat of Avestra, the weight of unhealed wounds in soul and sky, pressed down with no mercy. Arms looped beneath his shoulders. Arun, perhaps others. He let himself be lifted, too drained for pride. The smell of storm, the rattle of runic song in distant towers, the heartbeat of a city that refused surrender filled the shattered silence. He barely registered the murmurs. He gave us a chance. The storm bent. How did he stand? Too many questions, none that mattered. One thought beat through the pain, simple and sharp as the lightning that nearly split Windrest apart. This was only the beginning, a mere glimpse of Shadow's true reach. Avestra's peril was no fevered vision. It hunted with purpose, and Leora's flame now marked her as prey. As they carried him toward shelter, Veyran caught the glimmer of Zephyr's regret in the storm's departing edge, lingering like a wound that would not heal. The cost was not yet fully paid. Darkness and longing warred in the hollowed-out shell of his will. Still, as consciousness seeped away, his heart clung to a single, stubborn purpose. There was more to mend. The storm would not be the last. Night pressed in, and already new winds rose, restless, searching, bringing hints of Leora's fate from distant, broken cities.